is the Orange Zone, sponsored by Apex Entertainment.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into another edition of the Orange Zone podcast. That's Ashley Wenskoski. I'm Samantha Croston. Thank you so much for being here with us. We have some lacrosse news for you. We have some basketball news. We're going to talk a little bit of football. It is that season. Little bits and bops until we get to football season full time. You feel me?
Little collections, little bits and bops of Syracuse athletics news.
Absolutely. So we're going to start with some basketball news that came out today. The Syracuse Orange will face a pair of nationally ranked teams in its first two games at the Players Era Festival in Las Vegas. That's in November. All of this is according to a report. But it says that Syracuse will open the tournament with a game against Houston, the 2024 NCAA runner-up, on Monday, and will then face Kansas the next day.
Whew. Yikes. I feel like the only term to say there is yikes. I don't think that Syracuse could have drawn two more, daunting opponents to start off that tournament. Obviously, it's not a tournament that not to say it doesn't mean anything, but it's basically an NIL-based thing. This event is each team that participates, it's going to have 18 teams this year, looking to expand in 2026, receives $1 million, and Syracuse has already said that will be going towards its NIL collective. There's some rumors of players earning individual NIL contracts, but that hasn't been confirmed for this year's tournament. So it's basically this NIL tournament situation. I think if you're Syracuse, right, you're happy to be there. You're happy to get $1 million for your NIL collective, surely. To know that your first two teams that you drew were Houston and Kansas is a ripper. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts and anybody's thoughts in the comments about which way SU fans should look at this, because I saw this morning, Tuesday, a lot of negative reaction towards this on Twitter, on social, people being like, yikes, it's a terrible draw. And it is, okay? I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is. Those are two teams that you're not amped up to face if you're Syracuse men's basketball right now. However, if you're Syracuse and you're looking to get back to becoming a top tier program, you have Kyan Anthony coming in, 2 top 25 recruits in 2025. If you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. To me, I know it's not, it could be 2 losses and that just could be 2 blowouts. But at the same time, at least you're measuring yourself against high caliber competition right away in November. Why wouldn't you want to do that?
Did you just hit us with a one-liner? Is that what just happened?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, just checking. No, I totally agree with you. I think you read my mind in even bringing that up, because that's all that really matters when you think about this discussion, at least for right now. And this is going to come off, I think, a little harsh, but I really do feel this way. I think that if you're thinking about facing high-level competition in a negative way, that's sort of a loser mentality.
I was just about to say that. That was really weird. You read my mind.
I hate to say that, but I know we're locked in at this point.
Yeah.
Locked in.
It's a loser's mentality.
It really is. It's just not. That's not where you want to be, especially if you're Syracuse. You are coming off of one of the worst, if not the worst, seasons in program history. We need a hard reset here.
Yeah.
The way that you get a hard reset is by bringing in a relatively new group. They have that. By bringing in better recruits. They have that this year. Some transfers, whether or not the transfers were really great, I guess we'll see what happens, but at least they brought some in. And now on top of all of that, to your point, absolutely. A part of me feels like who even cares if both of those are losses? I understand that at the end of the year, you have to look at the net rankings, all this stuff, but strength of schedule does matter. And also, why is everybody just so quick to assume that it's going to be a loss? I get it. These are 2 good teams, but they're also different teams this year. Basketball, to me, feels like that kind of sport where the teams are changing so much and things are in flux all the time, where you don't exactly know how good a team is going to be from year to year. And either way, I think Syracuse is the perfect example of that. Yes, they're facing 2 opponents who tend to be high-level opponents, but I think Syracuse and a lot of the experts, quite honestly, that I've spoken to over the summer who really follow college basketball closely, think that Syracuse has the potential for this to be a year where they're really improving and taking a step back up to the point where potentially they're making March Madness, which is really what everybody wants.
Yeah, and I get it, right? It's been, 4 years, 5 years since the program has made the tournament. I understand all of it, and it's in November, right? So even if you get blown out in both of those games, Adrian Autry and everybody else is going to be like, early in the season, young team, we got all these freshmen. Like, I can hear it. And I know that that's going to be the excuses made if they do get blown out of both of those games. But to me, honestly, even if they do get blown out, it's at least a way to measure yourself against that competition early in the season. And if you happen to trip and fall into winning one of those games, then all of a sudden you have a bona fide quad 1 top 25 win, and it's November.
Right. It's funny because I think there is at least a portion of the Syracuse fan base who just doesn't even believe a victory in that situation is even possible.
Which is discouraging.
We have to at least start to think that way, you know? And I get it, you know, as fans or broadcasters, it certainly doesn't matter as much as if you're a coach or a player, but there needs to be some sort of belief here.
Yeah.
And you don't inspire belief in your players if you tell them you can't play to this level of competition. In a way, it's a bold statement by the Syracuse program to say, hey, we're going to reach high here. I mean, is that or is not that not what Fran Brown in some ways did? You know, like he's always trying to set really high, lofty goals. Maybe that means that you don't meet them, right?
Yeah.
He has gone on the record, this is Fran Brown I'm talking about, and said, I did not reach the goal that I wanted to meet in year one, right? Okay, fair. But at least he set a really high goal.
Yeah.
And I think most people ended up being happy because 10 wins was actually more than anybody expected,
Yeah.
despite the fact that he didn't get what he wanted. So I think that's maybe how you... Like that's like anything in life. I feel like if you're, you know, wanting to run a marathon and you say I want to run it in, you know, 4 hours versus 3:45. If you say 3:45, maybe you hit 3:50.
Yeah.
But if you say 4 hours, you might have just hit 3:59. I don't know, but that's the way I view it.
And just to, you know, I don't think Adrian Autry is going in there with the expectation to lose these 2 games. I'm not saying, like, make no mistake. When we sit here and say with a loser's mentality, we mean by the fan base. I'm not saying that about the coaching staff or Autry or anybody else. I'm sure that he's going in there and he is going to prepare them and he wants to win one or both of those games. I'm especially inspired. I would just like to say a little sidebar here. On last week's episode, we talked about the new strength and conditioning coach, Rob Harris. And I'm especially inspired by what I've seen from him, even in the last week's time. SU men's basketball has been putting out some social media clips of, you know, Cayenne and Sadiq and everybody training in the locker room, summer workouts. And he has, I don't know if you missed this because you were off for a few days.
Oh, I saw.
Dog, D-A-W-G.
He's got that dog in him.
Disciplined athletes with grit. We preached a lot on this podcast with Lawrence Moten this last winter about how SU men's basketball didn't have like an identity, an acronym. Well, they may just have their version of DART.
Syracuse loves acronyms, and acronyms love Syracuse.
Yeah.
Honestly, I love a good acronym. Somebody who comes in with something like that, first of all, have to think that Fran Brown has already introduced himself and it's like, what's up? How's it going? You know?
Dog.
Yes, 100%. No, but like you're so right. That was always the thing that was missing, was the identity. And quite honestly, when things got tough, I think this is why, like, let me also say this. I said, oh, loser mentality. Let me also say from another perspective here, if you're feeling that way right now, I see you and I understand you.
Yeah.
I get why you feel that way because when times got tough for Syracuse men's basketball last year, they didn't win.
Right.
When times got tough, nobody really stepped up to the challenge. Identity and having an identity is a part of that. I think that you really need to have something to rely on, some sort of belief or faith or hope or something that you can cling to when times get tough, and I don't think they had that.
I agree. I obviously think, you know, there were talent problems, there were cohesive gelling problems, but I think when you look at the Syracuse men's basketball teams of even the last few years, right? If you're a Syracuse fan, you haven't had much to inspire you regarding the men's basketball program in the past couple of years. A big part of that is discipline. A big part of the issues that we've been talking about under Adrian Autry have been disciplined. Think about Benny Williams. Think about all of a sudden Eddie Lampkin gets all this NIL money and he's not in shape to start the year. There's been discipline issues. So to hear Rob Harris come in as a new coach on the staff and as their essentially trainer, strength and conditioning coach, for his acronym to, I know that sounds stupid, but for his acronym to start with disciplined athletes with grit, I like to hear that.
Well, I'm happy that you filled me in on at least some of that because you're right to say I wasn't necessarily locked in on all of it last week, but I will say that, in short, I think that he is a missing piece for this program. It was something that maybe they didn't have last year, at least somebody who felt this strongly and this passionate about their job. So just to have a strength and conditioning coach who takes that seriously, I think is going to be helpful from not only a strength standpoint, but also injury prevention. We'll see what happens, but I feel good about what I've seen so far from Rob Harris. Okay, moving on. We also have some lacrosse news to talk about. This is brand new. Olivia ADAMSON is transferring out to go to Northwestern.
Yeah.
Dang, honestly, that one stings. Last year, she was actually out for most of the season. Lower body injury happened in February. But still, I have to say that I'm feeling surprised considering the fact that now Regy Thorpe is in. I thought that she would have maybe stuck around to see what happened there.
Yeah, if you're Regy Thorpe, it's certainly a significant loss. We talked about last week how he's gotten some 5-star recruits in, which is great, some freshmen coming in. But in terms of veteran leadership, right, Emma Ward's out, now Olivia ADAMSON's out. That one kind of stings, and especially to see her go to Northwestern. We've seen that happen with a few Syracuse players. Delaney Schweitzer among them, played her grad year at Northwestern. If you're Regy Thorpe, that is unfortunate. At the same time, to play your entire tenure at Syracuse under Kayla Trainer and then have her leave and have a coaching switch for your final season of eligibility, I get it if you're Olivia ADAMSON also.
And because think about it too, Northwestern is consistently one of those teams that is at the top or maybe 2 or 3. To me right now, if I'm Olivia ADAMSON and I want to win a national championship and that's important to me and I only have 1 year to do it, I'm not picking Syracuse as my front runner. I'm really not.
And I'm not probably sticking around for the Regy Thorpe rebuild in essence. That's, like we said, going to take maybe 3 to 5 years.
So the rebuild, not interested. But I really do. I honestly get that. And I think, listen, who knows? Honestly, I think we both agree the last time we sat down and talked about this that Regy Thorpe is probably going to exceed expectations in his first year. But still, even if the Syracuse team under his leadership is better than it was before him, I would be floored to see it be that good that they're able to beat a Boston College or a Northwestern or one of those teams that right now is just too established.
I agree.
So we'll see what happens with that. But some other lacrosse news as well. We have been following this for a few weeks now, the PALA women's qualifier that was taking place in Florida, because there were several teams playing in it, Team Haudenosaunee, Team USA, Team Canada, that all had some sort of either Syracuse or Central New York ties to it. The idea here in this tournament was that the top 4 teams five. Oh, it is 5? Yeah. Okay. Get to go and play in the World Lacrosse Championships in Japan next year. So we have great news to share on that front. Team Haudenosaunee, Team USA, and Team Canada will all be there, and they placed 1, 2, and 3. So there's going to be a lot of representation in that tournament.
Yes. The PALA Women's Lacrosse Championship, if you're just a little confused, a little fuzzy on what that is, it's the Pan-American Women's Lacrosse Championship. Like you said, the top 5 teams qualify for the World Championship in 2026. Neither of them are formal Olympic qualifiers because lacrosse will be back in the 2028 Summer Olympics, which is very exciting. But they're basically steps in the right direction. The IOC actually hasn't I did some research into this last night for my sports blog. That's why I know so much about this. But the IOC actually hasn't set formally what the qualifiers are going to be, but that World Championship is essentially an informal qualifier for the Olympics. So Team USA won the gold over Canada. They won 21-11 yesterday, which was fantastic. Team USA had both Emma Muchnick and Katie Goodale, which are current Syracuse women's lacrosse players. So fantastic for them. So exciting. And I would think, both of them are older, a senior and a grad student. I would think that, if they continue on with playing on Team USA in the World Championships, maybe there's a chance that they're on the Olympic team. So certainly keep your eyes out for that. Maddie Baxter and Bianca Chevery were on Team Canada. And then Team Haudenosaunee, we actually had Allie Trice and Paige Crandall on our podcast a couple weeks ago. If you're interested in going back and getting some insight into, it was a preview of this tournament. If you're interested in listening to that, but they actually got the bronze medal over Puerto Rico in the bronze medal game, which is so exciting because Team Haudenosaunee has never gotten a senior medal in an international field event. They've essentially never won a medal in an international event. So really, really big deal for them, especially as they are advocating the IOC to allow them to compete under the Haudenosaunee flag in the Olympics. They have not cleared that yet. That is still up for discussion, dispute, debate with the IOC. So the Haudenosaunee Nationals, this team, women's team, is essentially trying to do everything that they can to qualify for the Olympics, and to be on that stage next year at the World Championships is, a great step.
I'm admitting that I don't know all there is to know on this topic, but all I'm saying is, if Team Haudenosaunee not being able to be in the Olympics would just be so wrong, considering the roots of this sport and where this sport came from. So I'm hoping that all works out, sincerely. But I agree with you. I think sometimes even winning and just proving to people what you're capable of, it helps. It's a step in the right direction. So I'm pumped up for them. Liz Bevel is actually the coach of that team, or one of them, and she coaches right now as the head coach at Lemoyne. So a lot of great connections there, and we're hoping to be able to potentially have on Liz Bevel or some other, players who can kind of explain more about that. But it was a big deal. It really was.
Yeah, it's obviously been a dispute. It's their game. The Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois created the game of lacrosse. So, I think to see them compete under their own flag on the world stage would be fantastic. And these women certainly really took a step in the right direction there this week with the bronze.
No doubt about it. Beyond that, we also just wanted to kind of cue you guys in to an event that Ashley was at over the weekend. Where she was able to speak with some former SU players and hear a little bit more about how they're feeling about Fran Brown, the direction of the program, just a little bit of Syracuse football right now to get you excited about what's to come in the next month or two.
Yeah,
what do you got?
We still have like a month until camp. I know it's the off season for Syracuse football, squarely the dead zone, but I miss it too. So
I'm ready.
Anytime I get to go to one of these events, I'm like, okay, here's a glimmer of football.
And positional previews coming soon and whatnot.
Yes.
We'll really start ramping up our football coverage in the next few weeks.
Yes. Anyways, this event was the second annual Charity Golf Classic. It's the upstate New York chapter of the NFL Alumni Association, which is not just alumni. There are some current players there, by the way. So NFL alumni and current players. But they hosted at Timberbanks Golf Club in Baldwinsville, and it's a 2-day thing. So I was at the meet and greet dinner thing on Sunday night, and then they played golf on Monday, and it's all to raise money for local nonprofits. This year it was for David's Refuge in East Syracuse, which is an organization that their slogan is that they care for the caregivers. So they basically provide support for parents of children with special needs and medical conditions. And so very great cause that they were all gathered together for. But of course, if you get all those guys in a room together, they're going to talk some Syracuse football. They're going to talk some Fran Brown. So got to talk to Rob Drummond, who obviously lives in the area. He's a coach at JD, former SU running back. James Mungro was, of course, there. You guys all know James from being on our podcast during football season. Dan Conley, really the usual suspects of the guys that are Syracuse alumni that, more so live in the area. An interesting one was Riley Dixon, because I was actually at the event last year and he wasn't there. Mm-hmm. He's still in the NFL. He's currently a punter for the Tampa Bay Bucks. He's 31 now. He, went to Syracuse, had a year that was so fantastic that, people were talking about him for the Heisman, and he's a punter. So he even predates Dino Babers, which was a little crazy for me to think about. I'm 24, so...
It broke your brain.
It broke my brain a little bit because he's only 31, but predated Babers. But anyways, he was just talking about, and it was interesting to hear his perspective as more of a recent alum of the program, still in the NFL. Just seeing the Syracuse program turn around under Fran, something we've heard so many times. Fran called me right away when he got the job. He said, not only do I want you in here with the guys, to mentor them and lead them and whatnot as a current NFL player, but I want to extend an offer to you when you come home in the offseason to work out at our facilities. And these are things we've now heard over and over again over the last year and a half since Fran Brown has been the head coach. But to hear that sentiment echoed even on a personal level for Dixon, right? This is not something that was happening with the Syracuse program under Dino Babers. And Rob Drummond said that bluntly. He said, and I quote, under Dino Babers, we felt ostracized, which is a great way to sum up, what we've been hearing from them in the last few months. I guess it's just it's a great sign of culture building, as we know and as we've said, right? To come home and, work out here in the off season. Like, this is your home. Let us extend you the invite to really make it your home during the off season too.
For the record, let it be known that I don't think Dino Babers actually wanted to make anyone feel alienated. I just don't think he did a good enough job reaching out. I think the onus is on the head coach to be aware of the fact that this still really matters to all the people who are a part of this program, and to, like you said, extend offers. That's something Fran Brown is really good at, is making every single person who he talks to feel important.
Yeah.
You can meet him for just one interaction that's 30 seconds and he's asking you questions and he truly cares about the answers. That goes a long way in recruiting as far as I'm concerned. Had one other question for you if you happen to ask it, because you mentioned that there was someone who was a high school coach there. Did any of the high school coaches talk about recruiting at all, or how that's been impacted locally? Anything like that? I'm just curious, the high school coaches in the area, how they're feeling about the impact of having someone like him here.
Yeah, Rob Drummond, so he's the head boys varsity track and field coach at Jamesville DeWitt High School, and he's an assistant football coach. I didn't get to ask him about recruiting. JD also hasn't. I mean, JD football is sort of, they haven't had any Syracuse commits. I think, we've talked to Bruce Williams and stuff over at CBA and the CNS coaches a little bit more about that because they have a few guys in this incoming 2026 class. So I didn't ask Drummond, but he was just so hep on the open door policy under Fran Brown. I feel like Rob Drummond, because this is what he told me, thinks that he can call up Fran or he can walk into the offices over at Ensley any day of the week if he wants to, whether it's a program-related football thing, whether it is more of a high school recruiting thing because he is a coach locally, no matter what it pertains to. And I think that's just a good feeling, right? Like we talked about Dino Babers, and there's a lot you can say there, but I think you can sum it up by saying he just didn't really have a pulse on the local culture surrounding football at the high school level, at the college level, right? Like a guy like Riley Dixon, I'm just talking about, he went to CBA. It's important, even if he didn't play for you, to reach out to those guys and to make them feel like this is their home.
Also, here's the other thing. Fran Brown does that because that's who he is, and he actually wants to make sure everyone feels important and feels heard and feels valued. But think about it. In building all of those connections, you're now going to have first dibs on any player in the central New York area and beyond who's really good. You actually gain so much more from being nice, from being welcoming. And I think over, the next decade, you will see the impact of that. And all of a sudden, Syracuse is the New York school, if they aren't already,
Yeah, and I think so much of, just pro football and football at the college level is a network, right? We've even learned that through this job. Well, who can I call up on the high school level that knew this kid, that recruited this kid, that talked to a coach that was recruiting this kid? Okay, then you get to the college level. These guys graduate. They go off to NFL teams. They either get drafted or catch on as undrafted free agents. To your point, Fran Brown is smart, and that's what the great programs in this country do, is sort of building that network and that web so that, okay, nobody did this year, but next year somebody signs as an undrafted free agent with the Tampa Bay Bucks, call up Riley Dixon. He plays for the Bucks. Like, this sounds like very simple things, but I don't think this is what was happening at Syracuse prior to the Fran Brown era.
Being personable, charisma, charm go a long way in the society.
Yes.
That's all I have to say on that. Final thoughts, and then we'll wrap it up and get out of here.
Final thoughts. Everybody's dying for football season. So after the 4th and sort of into July, we will get into more seasonal previews. I know camp doesn't really start until the calendar flips to August, but we will do what we can both on the recruiting front and some position group previews to get into it before that.
Okay, I would like to just lastly welcome in our new intern, Kenny Hotchkiss. Thanks so much for being here. Excited to have you on board with our team. So you'll see that he's going to start working on potentially some of these clips on the Orange Zone. Intern Kenny. We call all of our interns Intern Blank. I feel like
Intern Kenny.
Intern Jeremy, Intern Dan. This is Intern Kenny. So thanks, Kenny, for being with us. And thank you all for being with us for this episode of the Orange Zone. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much, as always, to Apex Entertainment for sponsoring. We will see you back here next week.